Good Sunday afternoon. Welcome inside the scores table. Brian Haenchen and Danny Riego here with you. We're here to recap the Semistate championship games from Saturday night. Danny, just big picture. There were some really big surprises, some really fun games, and some sets the stage for a really interesting final Saturday of the high school girls basketball season.
Yes. I think there were surprises yesterday, like some pretty big ones, but I also think entering the 4A semi-state, I think most people would have had Center Grove and Norwell, so I think that's chalk. And when you don't have upsets, you get prize fights.
I am so excited for that 4A championship game, by the way. I wrote that this morning. Just two teams who are so stinking good at what they do, particularly on the defensive end, but they do it in such vastly different ways. And then on top of that, I think the biggest storyline there is that you have the two biggest and best performers of this tournament in Vanessa Rossworm and Grayson Gilliard going head-to-head. Like, I don't think at this point in the season, I don't think that there's anybody who has outperformed those two individuals. When you look at what Vanessa did against Homestead, when you look at what Grayson did against Franklin Central and all the way through, and then Vanessa obviously all the way through. She had another couple 20 burgers last night. Grayson Gilliard, who we'll talk about here in a bit, massive performance against Lawrence Central to get Center Grove through to the championship game for the first time since '96. I mean, that 4A final, man, that's going to be a doozy for sure.
It's correct. But defense also wins championships, and I think these are the two most coordinated defenses anywhere in 4A, and they are both on the final weekends playing for a state championship. I think it just reaffirms all of the cliches of like the defense wins championships.
Yeah. We're going to recap the games. Danny and I obviously have plenty of coverage and shows. I'll have written coverage. We'll have shows together here in State Week leading up and previewing those games. But right now, Danny, let's start our conversations with the 3A South at Southport. Okay. I think that was probably the game of the night when you have Roncalli holding off Jennings County 50-47. A back-and-forth game. I know you were streaming it. I was just speed watching it before we jumped on here. Molly Ernstis was unbelievable. She clears 30 points. She scored 15 of her team's 20 points in the first half and then added on 18 of their 27 in the second. She had a look at the buzzer, which we'll show here once we get into the conversation. But take it any way you want. We can talk about the way that Roncalli tried to defend her straight up and just kind of figured we're going to let her do her thing and try not to let anybody beat us. We can talk about, just Roncalli's grittiness, Molly and what she's done. I'll let you decide where we go with this.
I'll start with Mo because she dictated the defensive game plan of Coach Sims and Roncalli. I think you're right. I think it was a dedicated effort to allow Molly to get hers and try to limit everybody else. And that was the storyline going into it, was Jennings County had shown that they can win in both ways. And they were good enough to win. Molly was good enough to win. She was really, really extraordinary. That game could have gone either way, but I'm going to very quickly get to Elliot Leffler. And the reason why is because all kids miss, right? And Elliot's she's not immune to that. She also misses. But you know what she never does? She never chokes. Like, she always makes shots in the big spots. This is now the second time in the postseason where she's been at the free throw line with a chance to ice the game or win the game. And she did like a baseline out of bounds execution play in the Cathedral game. That kid is so clutch. And that's no exception in the regional game, the semi-state championship game, where she's at the line up one with a chance to put them up three before Jennings County's final possession, where you guys kind of saw on Indy Star and Kyle Nettenrip's Twitter, the 2 threes that Molly had. If she doesn't convert those, Molly's going for three anyways. Like, she's make or miss, she's going for those, but that allows Coach Sims to have fouling options, help options, trap options, things like that. They were just such clutch free throws. That kid has been outstanding in the postseason, and I think it just cannot be overstated how clutch that kid is.
Here's a look at those final 3-pointers. This is Jennings County's final possession. I watched this from the bowels of Jasper's Arena after everything had been decided. I knew Roncalli won, but watching this sequence unfold, I thought for sure Molly hit one of these. Like, even knowing what happened, I mean, it looks like she hits him, especially the second one here coming up. And on the broadcast, it looks even closer than it does from the angle that Kyle had. I mean, just unbelievable look. I mean, you can't ask for anything else if you're Jennings County. And, I mean, 9 times out of 10, it seems like Molly hits those. I mean, she's just such a phenomenal player. And tip of the cap, because I would argue that I think Jennings County maybe they exceeded my expectations at least. Like they just kept on winning. I mentioned that during the preview show. I mean, every single time, and it wasn't just Molly; it was everybody stepping up around her. But the thing that I always go back to with players like her and kids of that character, they're comfortable stepping up in those moments because of the stars, because the stars give them the confidence to, deliver and perform in those moments and play free of pressure and all that.
Yeah, I talked to Jason before the game. Excuse me, before his morning game, and he had just gotten done watching Molly and what she did to Washington in the semifinal. And I'm not sure that he was convinced as to what he was going to do even at that point in time against Molly. Like she was really playing at. I mean, you kind of opened the show talking about how great Gilliard and Rossworm have been. If Molly had advanced to the state championship, it might have changed your first sentence of the show, because 100%. It might have been, she might have been included in that mix. But
and she
it's not them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course. I'm not taking anything away.
You're right. Yeah, 100%. Like if it's Jennings County marching on, it's Molly Ernstis and Vanessa Rossworm and Grayson Gilliard all in that same conversation. You're absolutely right. She was phenomenal. I mean, I think back to that first one when you read it, what was it, 11 assists in the sectional championship game, and then just casually goes out against Silver Creek, drops 30 in the first game yesterday, 30 plus in the second. I mean, just unbelievable.
Well, they would look in the morning game. They got 10 fourth quarter points from Aniston Kent. That's a familiar name because she's the kid who hit the game-winning 3 last year to give them their first sectional in how many ever years. She was also a kid who hit big threes, I believe, in the Warsaw game en route to their biggest upset of the year. And then the 10 fourth quarter points against Washington. They needed a performance like that. I mean, Mo had 33 of the 47 points, something like that, 34 of the 47. They just needed to catch that. And it's not a criticism of those other players. They've been great. They're not there without them. But that's Coach Sims. That's Coach Sims just putting his chips in one box, and it paid off just enough.
That's a perfect transition to Roncalli. I was texting with Sims a little bit last night, just, congratulating him getting a quick read on things. And just, I mean, the grittiness of that group to battle back from some deficits, to have a lead then late, to lose that lead late. I mean, just back and forth, the way that team resiliently held on there. They're down 4, put on the press and go on an 8-0 run in the fourth quarter. Roncalli did.
Yeah. They are also very well coached from a scheme perspective. There was one series in the first half that I point to illustrate that. So we had talked leading up to it that Roncalli likes to set high ball screens in the middle of the floor, and that was something that he kind of got from Coach Hollins at Pike and was tossing around with it, and they were kind of sharing that middle ball screen with their box action, so on and so forth. Okay, so using your mind's eye, there is a screener on mostly Leffler, which is the cue, right? When Leffler brings it up, it's like, okay, let's get ready for central third ball screen. There's a screener. That screener rolls. The other action that happens when that roll happens is there's a rise. Now, Christy Sigler and Jennings County took that rise defender and kept them in the paint to guard against Leffler at the rim, and it worked. Jason Sims at the beginning of the second quarter went right back to that action, and instead of putting Leffler in the ball screen, he put Leffler in the rise. Her defender stays home in the paint, and she gets an early 3. That is unbelievable on-the-fly recognition and execution and change at the break. And so Roncalli, yes, you're right. The statements that you made, yes, they're gritty. Yes, they make winning plays. Yes, they have tough kids. Yes, they have clutch Leffler. But Jason also has a very good comfort level as to where he is right now. Those on-fly adjustments that are starting to show. You tell me if those 3 points were important as the game aged into the last possession of the game, right? So That's all you're trying to do is give your kids every advantage, and he certainly is.
One more thought for me, Dave, before I pass it over to you for any final thoughts on that game. Just the environment and the atmosphere there at Southport Arena looked unbelievable. I mean, Jennings County, the entire town, I think, was there. And then the Roncalli, they always have a good supporter base too. But I mean, just the videos that I saw, I was texting with Clark Wade, who shot the highlights that you saw earlier, our videographer. He said that he got there at 7 o'clock and the parking lot was already full, and he got one of the last spots. I mean, that's incredible. And it was that way for the morning games too. And I'm not a fan of this doubleheader semi-state, but when it works like that, it's fun. It just doesn't. For the opposite side of that, you come and look where I was last night, Jasper. It was depressing at times, but Southport, phenomenal atmosphere, and it was kind of like a road game for Roncalli. It sounds like, which is wild.
Yeah, and I don't want to hop down the wrong rabbit hole here. We'll get right back to Roncalli, but I think the fan bases need to be credited, but I also think the proximity of the gym to those schools also has just that's obvious.
That's the luck of the draw thing, yeah.
That's totally correct. I'm sure Center Grove is going to have gripes about whatever. I want to shout Roscoe out. Like Katie Roscoe had a reverse layup that ended up being a huge play in that game. And I was just thinking, like, that kid doesn't even know that she gives up inches to, like, she is so confident. And what I always like to say about players that give up inches is, like, it's not Katie Roscoe's first time being small. Like, she knows how to get her shot off. She knows how much distance there is in front of her in regards to blocked shots and things like that for her defender. But she had a monster play. Like, she just dribbled around. It looked like she was going to Steve Nash it. I think I'm stealing that quote directly from the stream. But it looked like she was going to wheel it back out, and she just off the bounce, one hand reverse layups it. I use that singular play to tell you that these kids are just flying super high. Like, like notwithstanding what Leffler is doing, but Cerny has no problem taking the Molly Ernst matchup. Roscoe has no problem, getting into the paint and mixing it up down there and getting buckets and making plays. Staley is looking more and more and more active. They get a big time three from Lola Morelli, who I'm not sure did anything in the first game, but a monster three in the second half. Like, Roncalli's depth, I think, needs to be talked about when discussing their DNA as a team, because Jason has a lot of tools in his toolbox right now.
And it's all coming together at just the right time. You talk about peaking at the right time, and Roncalli is certainly one of those teams that fits the build. Anything else, Danny, you wanted to empty out on 3A, or should we move up to the 4A South?
No, we can. 3A South, done.
4A South, Center Grove, Lawrence Central, 29-26. I will start my commentary with this. I got a lot of replies about the final score. I swear to you, it was so much better than that final score. And I loathe low-scoring games and games that have final scores like this. And I will be the first one to tell you that. I think that that's well documented. But this one, I mean, it never at any point really felt like it was a low-scoring game, because it was so intense. It comes down to the final possession, and a phenomenal game. It was a stereotypical Center Grove game where you have all these different kids stepping up alongside or behind Garrison Gilliard. The defense was exceptional. Their ebbs, their flows in Lawrence Central fashion. They never really got running, but they hung in there with the punches, which has kind of been, their MO this season, was just a team, their ability to overcome adversity and fight through things. Well, that's what they did Saturday night. And it was just, phenomenal entertainment.
It was not just Center Grove's defense that was good. It was also Lawrence Central's defense that was really good too. The offensive inefficiencies are a direct result of how good the construction of those defensive game plans were. And we'll unpack that as the time goes, but that's the star of the game, was the defense. We talk about Stuckmeyer's coaching tree out of Jack Edison, how they switch everything and play in gaps. There's just so much to unpack with this because of how this plays into the dribble drive with Norwell. But staying with the Lawrence Central stuff, like to hold that team to 26 points. Here's the one thing that you can say about Center Grove going into it. At least we can say it now also in retrospect. You cannot drive to score against Center Grove. You have to drive and pass the basketball. They just will not let you get to the basket. And those are some of the best downhill attackers that this state has in any class in maybe even the last few years. Like Kiki Butler and Lola Lampley and Anaya McKenzie, those kids, three kids in particular, are relentless in open space. And there just wasn't any gaps. And that's the design and the construction of Stuckmeyer's defense. Like when you're at the top, it almost looks like a box and one. The other kids are in a box zone. When the ball's on the wing, it looks like two kids are playing man. The rest of them are playing zone. But their ability to keep them out of the paint kept Lawrence Central completely off balance, kept Kevin ahead of the game flow. They just never figured it out. And when you are guarding like that, you don't need to score more than 27 points. They did. They scored 29. But it doesn't matter. Like, the star of the game was their defensive execution and their defensive game plan. And I don't think it was anything new. It's what they've done all year. You just can't get to the basket against them.
I think I texted you when I was at dinner with Soak that I think Center Grove just needs to get to 50 and they'll be okay. I'm an idiot. I think is the
I
takeaway from that
agreed.
because I thought in the morning game, and the reason that I thought Floyd Central might take out Lawrence Central is because their defense is really good. But the difference is that Floyd Central struggles to score the ball and doesn't have quite that timely scoring to go with that shutdown defense like Center Grove does. And that kind of leads into Grayson Gilliard and what she did last night. Playing through the ankle injury she suffered in the sectional final against Franklin Central. On top of that, she started cramping up in the middle of the game. There was a play where it looked like her leg was about to give out. It turns out it was cramps. She hydrated. She was okay. But she did all that. She was the focal point of Lawrence Central's defense, and the kid just kept making big play after big play. And there were a lot of other kids stepping up making big plays too, but it was Grayson who put the team on her back once again, scored the final 4 points of regulation, got the basket in between Lampley and McKenzie, and we talk all year about how she's polished and is making better decisions. So instead of trying to force it when she posts up in there in the lane, she swings her hips, spins around, and gets in there unabated for the easy layup to go ahead. Then gets back to the line and hits the next two free throws to make it a 3-point game. That winds up being the difference. But that was an excellent performance from Grayson last night, and just another statement won by her.
She was very special, and her name appeared a lot, I am sure, across several text threads, if my phone is any indication of what people also saw in that game. Your description of her is very, very spot on. I thought her decision-making was really good. Here's the interesting thing. If you take that game back to the first quarter, Grayson got by Lola a couple of times early. She smoked one of the layups, got one of them to go. But it wasn't that the reason why I bring that up is because I think Grayson knew very early in that game that she could get wherever she wanted. And so she could bide her time and be very patient. That's a word that you used, and make really good decisions as to when to do that. And she did that. Now, Lawrence Central, to their credit, also adjusted, right? Lola, who maybe looked a little bit tired, they put McKenzie on her, and she did not have as much success attacking Anaya McKenzie as she did some other players. But Grayson, I felt like, just kind of knew, I can take this game over. If we continue to get stops, I can take this thing over. And taking it over in a game like that isn't going on an 8-0 run. It's going on a 4-0 run. And she did that a couple of times because 4 points was, in a 29-26 game, do the math, right? But she was really, really good. And I would add, too, you talked about the cramps. She actually did not start the basketball game on the floor in the fourth quarter, which is unbelievable. I would suspect that Coach Stuckmeyer saw the same thing that I did, which was maybe Lawrence Central is wearing down a little bit. Grayson might be a little banged up a little bit. She can get wherever she wants. I'm going to give her a couple of minutes, send her in fresh, and I'm going to get the best player on the floor that nobody can stay in front of for 5 minutes. And I don't know if that's the reason why she took the game over in the fourth quarter. But if it is, I tip my cap to Coach Stuckmeyer, because I don't know that I'm putting Grayson Gilliard anywhere near the bench in the fourth quarter of a semi-state championship game. And he did, and it paid off.
And we have to talk about what she did defensively, too. Obviously, Center Grove switches everything, and they switch them fast. But Gilliard was on Lampley for a lot of that game, and she held her to 5 points. That is unheard of, and especially after what Lola did against Pike the week before. That's spectacular. And obviously, team effort, switching all that again. But again, it was Grayson that took that assignment at the beginning, and then they moved and adjusted as necessary. But it was her who did a lot of the heavy lifting against Lampley and looked really good doing it.
Yeah, and you're right. I think all due respect to Grayson Gilliard and all due respect to Haley Wagner, who was also really good. Also, the star of the game was the defense. I think we can punctuate that and transition to this. I think there was a major plot development that was happening through that game. LC, when en route to the state championship a couple of years ago, would just instill fear in their opponent, and they would wait to run their, what we were calling then red H, based on a sign that they would hold up, and that 1-3-1. Center Grove was super ready for the 1-3-1. I think they ran it 4 possessions, and I think they scored 8 points on 4 layups. Now, again, credit to LC. They recognized, because they took the lead. Lawrence Central took the lead early. They went to the 1-3-1. They were following the formula that they followed a couple of years ago, which is we're going to get the lead and then we're going to bury you in this 1-3-1. And they got, I think it was at least 2 consecutive layups by Haley Wagner wide open on the left side.
Mm-hmm.
They take the lead. LC gets immediately out of it. I think the one decision that they would want back was going back to the 1-3-1 in the second half. They went back to the 1-3-1, and instead of the one possession turnover in adjustment, they got the same layup that they got in the first half with Wagner. Their readiness to handle that defense by Lawrence Central, which has been one of the best weapons in the recent history of Indiana girls high school basketball, for them to be that effective against that press is another major, major plot development and why they're moving on as well.
I put down there when it happened the first time when they got the Wagner layup in the whatever quarter it was. I put a little asterisk next to that, made a note to myself as I was keeping score. Watch out for this, because Wagner was wide open. There was just a soft spot right there in the middle of the defense, right around that free throw line. And you're right. And there were a couple times there where Center Grove struggled against the press. I think they might have got a 5-second or whatever whatever it was. There were some struggles there. They didn't look fully comfortable. And you could see Stuckmeyer kind of pointing things out to the point guard saying, here's where I want the ball to go. And then they start hitting consistently. And then the last time they hit it to Wagner, she actually looks, and I wrote about this in the notebook that posted today, but you see her look over to Grayson Gilliard, who's open in the corner, and Grayson's just like, no, go to the basket. She spins, goes, wide open layup. And that put it, I think, at Center Grove's largest lead of the day at like 5.
That's a really good catch by you.
Yeah. Yep. It was, I mean, just the way, you're right. Like, their readiness for that press was excellent. Because, I mean, we've seen it thousands of times.
Uh-huh. So the limiting of turnovers, I think, was a key for both basketball teams. Lawrence Central turned it over a lot in the morning game versus Wrights, and they should have put Pike away, quite honestly, earlier. They kind of felt the turnover problems. Center Grove also turned the ball over. You mentioned the 5-second call, but you want to know the difference with Center Grove's turnovers, and I don't know if this is by accident, by coincidence, or if this is something that we should actually credit, but their turnovers were dead ball turnovers. 5-second calls are not bad turnovers, particularly when you're getting stops and playing in gaps in defense. It's the live ball turnovers that really hurt you, particularly against a team like Lawrence Central. And Lawrence Central knew it. They ramped up the pressure. They were trying to get very physical and very bothersome to Lilia Tapak, who's a freshman, and they tried to turn the brightness of the lights up on her. But you can say, like, oh, she, there's a couple 5-second calls. I don't know if both of them were her, but those were dead ball changes of possession. I would bet the points off of turnovers were very, very, very low. And that's another thing, too, is now kids like Tapak, now kids like Wagner,
Pierce,
they don't feel like they have to be perfect. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, that was always the feel. That's how Lawrence Central would beat the brakes off of you 2 years ago. You felt like you needed to be perfect. You make one mistake, Jayla Lampley would hit a 3, and then they would bury you, absolutely bury you in like the next 5 possessions. You don't feel like you need to be perfect, particularly when you're Center Grove and they were having that so much success on the defensive side. So all of the turnovers, all of the Gilliard stuff, all of the Wagner finishing at the rim, all of the Stuckmeyer nuance adjustments, all of those things are related back to the fact that we can stop them. And they did. It almost rendered the offensive rebounding effectiveness of Lawrence Central. It almost rendered that moot, because they would wheel it out. You're like, oh my God, they're getting killed on the glass, but it didn't lead to second chance points. Mm-mm. So I lead to that. I led with talking about how I think Norwell and Center Grove are the 2 most coordinated or best coordinated defenses, and they're so dissimilar with how they do it. I cannot wait. It's like a coach's dream to watch this matchup, and it should be a fan's dream also. But everything about this, about what Center Grove doing to advance against Norwell is I'd sign me up for it. I'm in.
Lawrence Central has a chance late in regulation at the very end. I think there's like 15 seconds left. Center Grove goes 0 for 2 at the line, still a 3-point game. I'm sitting there thinking, oh boy, here we go. This game's going to overtime. And then what happens is Lola gets the ball down across the timeline and then just kind of pulls up. And what happened there, according to Janon Lampley, was there's some miscommunication. She's waiting for a screen to come over. You actually see Anaya McKenzie waving over for a screen. You see Lola then dribbles up towards the middle to the top of the arc and points where she wants maybe Kiki Butler or somebody to screen for her. so she can try and get a clean look at that game tying three, but it never comes, and the play never really takes form. Jennings finally gets the timeout in at like 3.3 seconds left on the final play of regulation, which I'll roll here while we're talking. They're trying to look. They get another flare screen. I think it was for Lola. Lily Hyatt pops open, gets the shot. I mean, it's a good look. The shot just wouldn't go. You can't ask for much else, I suppose, if you're Lawrence Central, but kind of a chaotic finish to the game, and Jennings Lampley wore it, honestly. It's what she said afterwards. She just says, I need to make sure that my players are on the same page in those situations, and it didn't happen there.
She allowed Lola, who's one of the most extraordinary talents that we've seen, make a play in live ball change of possession. Like, so the same criticism could be made if she had called the early timeout, and then somebody would say, the same people would say, well, why are you calling timeout? You can't get anything against them anyways. So just take the opportunity in live ball. Then timeout, sure. I'm sure she would admit that the timeout probably came a little bit late, but they got a good look. I mean, there's 150 different things that you can run sideline out of bounds with 3.3 seconds to allow your player one dribble and get a shot up. And she ran one of them, and she got a great one, and they just missed it. So while we can amplify how that looked, you just have to remove kind of the 12 seconds or so maybe where it looked odd. The only thing to maybe go back at that is, like, do you just get downhill, go for two? Like, Lola just got an and one like a couple of possessions ago. So she was starting to, kind of put the team on its back a little bit, but just an interesting end to the game. And I'm sure there was a lot of conversation between a lot of coaches about it.
I'm glad you mentioned that too. That's what they wanted initially when Lola came across the timeline off the offensive rebound and that live ball movement. They wanted to get a shot up chance at the offensive rebound, or potentially, Jennings didn't mention it, but I assume too, right, get something going to the basket, whatever it may be. And it didn't happen. And that happens. And honestly, in that final play, who do we talk about leading into this game as just kind of being one of those unsung heroes for LC and hitting those big shots? Lily Hyatt. She did it earlier in the day too. She had a big three for them. So no issue with the shot. It's not she rushed it. It's just some shots don't fall. I thought that they played a great game there. And two, putting the bow on the go ahead.
They sent in that sideline out of bounds. They sent Kiki to the corner. Kiki, I think, might have been 3 for 4-ish, 3 for 5-ish, maybe from the 3-point line at that point in time. They tried to get her kind of on the downhill and let her kind of take one of those sidestep threes in the corner right there. Center Grove just covered it really well. I mean, they're switching everything, right? And so that is something that, player positioning, I think you don't know necessarily which one is going to be there. I am sure, I think it might have been Hannah, I think, kind of dropped into the paint a little bit. I think Kevin will probably point out that that's a layup that we can give up, that we just can't give up that open three. Essentially what happened there was you just don't know who's going to make the mistake or what the switch is going to do. But I would have loved to see Kiki get that at the end there, because I thought she kind of had that look about her, just kind of living opportunities throughout the game.
You watch Grayson Gilliard on that play. I'll bag it up here, but you see Grayson follow Lola. I think that they were supposed to switch on that too, so that Lily Hyatt is left wide open.
She just stayed. Yeah,
she followed her over there as instinct is. But
it's interesting. That's intuition. It's intuition of a great player.
It is. On the LC side, just tying a ball on them. I mean, the job that Lola Lampley and Anaya McKenzie did in building up that program in their 4 seasons is phenomenal. I did the math this morning, went through the season logs. They totaled 90 wins with 3 20-win campaigns in their 4 seasons, which is insane for a program that hadn't won more than 14 games in a season since the turn of the century. That's a pretty significant jump. And I mean, you can't say enough about what those two did. Then you add in this year Aubrey Ingram and Kiki Butler, and their job as a foursome, a quartet, of keeping that team together. The Shellhammer departure, they lost, 4 of 5 in the middle of December, including a Marion County loss to Roncalli. Then the loss to Pike that was ugly, like ugly. To then right the ship against some tough out-of-state competition, go into their rematch with Pike, upset them in the regional championship game in the fashion in which they did. I mean, that speaks volumes about the kid's character. And honestly, that's what I'll remember their legacy as, is just this season and some of the stuff those 4 overcame, and then Anaya and Lola dialing it back, their roles and building up that program into, what was kind of a bottom dweller, to be blunt, into the powerhouse. And this is the expectation, as I framed it to Janam, we were talking last night, that they're playing for spots at Cambridge Fieldhouse. It's pretty remarkable to do it so quickly.
Yeah.
Let's shift up to the 4A North, Danny. Norwell McCutcheon 59-42. McCutcheon, I think I texted you this, but I mean, just a team that I underestimated every step of the way, if I'm being honest, with between the HSE game and then even in the opener against Northridge. And they proved me wrong both times. And they put up a good fight there against Norwell early on. It just Norwell's a really tough team to keep up with.
It is. Just a couple notes about McCutcheon. The plan was good. The execution was actually pretty good at times. Yeah, they had probably too many turnovers for their liking. Maybe it felt like a 20-ish turnover kind of game when you watched it. But Lily Graves had a look about her. She looked really, really confident in that game. She looked really good in that game. She was creative. And what I liked about the way that McCutcheon executed their plan, and this will be more for the show that we do later in the week, some of what Norwell's success has been diminished a little bit with guards that can penetrate the 1-3-1 off the dribble. That is so counterintuitive to what you would ever want to do. But Jocelyn Bricker cut that thing up off the bounce. And Homestead tried to pass through it. McCutcheon passed through it too, but they did so by penetrating through that first initial gap that Rossworm kind of creates. That was a really good plan. And I thought Lily played really well from a point guard perspective. She was playing point guard basically all night, most of the season. But her ability to get by kind of Rossworm in that first dribble move made them really effective. They just didn't make enough shots and didn't take care of it enough when those dribble gaps were not there.
20 turnovers for McCutcheon against that Norwell defense. 20. Lily, by the way, finished with 20 points on 8 of 18 shooting. Trinity Wilburn added 9. You mentioned it. I mean, just they looked really good in that semifinal against Northridge. Just Norwell has a way of beating teams like that. I'm just skimming Ethan's story here for stats and whatnot. What else did you see, Danny, from the Norwell side of things, particularly on the offensive end? Because, I mean, that's has been the story with McCutcheon this tournament, right? Is just how they've shut down and contained KK Holman and then Lily Skoll and just, teams like that.
They make shots. Such a dumb comment, okay? But they do. They went on a 6-0 run. I don't know who the two players were that hit the three. I actually think it was two of their headliners. I actually think it might have been Stolfrank and Rossworm back-to-back when it was a 10-point game and there was still drama. And I think the first timeout that made it 13 led to a Jeff Conoy timeout, and I believe the next three in the next possession led to a second timeout. And suddenly it's 16. Like, they just make shots. Like, Saul Frank is shooting it the same way that she was shooting it at the end of the year last year when Norwell made it and capped off their state championship running 3 over Brownsburg. But I think she has offensive outputs in the postseason that are like 24, 16 or 18-ish. I think it felt like, I didn't stat the game or see a box score, but it felt like she was probably at a 17, 18-ish kind of game last night. I think the broadcast said that she got into the mid-20s the day before in the regional when Rossworm had 38. Let's not forget that Macy Solfrank had 24. Those kids make shots, and it's Dale, it's Rossworm, it's Solfrank, it's Norris, it's all of them. So they are relentless. The same thing that I said about Lawrence Central 2 years ago is the same thing that could be said about Norwell. Is if you don't take care of the basketball, they make you pay just as much as anybody else, except they're ripping threes instead of twos, and that's a very difficult pace to keep up with.
Credit to McCutcheon's defense. Rossworm finished with 19, but she did it on 5 of 19 shooting.
There you go. There's the formula.
Yeah, but then to your other point, 3 of 9 from 3, and then you have Solfrank going 5 for 12 from 3, and Ashley Walton went 2 for 4 from 3, and they finished 11 of 30 from 3 as a team. So I suppose that'll do it.
One more. I just want to tease a little bit of the preview show that we're going to have for the state championship later. There's going to be a lot of discussion about 1-3-1. It's going to be headed up a lot by us, quite honestly, on that show. But I keep always saying, I think the true, I mean, it is really their dribble drive too. Like, I don't know how to, okay. So like it's in my playbook. I run dribble drive. Okay. We probably run 10% of what they do. Like they do, Hank, they do stuff I've never seen. Like, and I've never seen. And so that's a very difficult assignment to prepare for when you're that deep into your bag that, and I see a lot of Norwell basketball, they're showing things in that game that quite frankly, I've never seen. And so the way that Center Grove plays gaps, that's not like something that they've never seen. It just might be something that we've never seen Norwell have to answer. But they have that stuff. Like it'll probably be a little bit more ball screen oriented, and they'll have to create triple gaps. The thing that makes that matchup between Norwell and Center Grove so juicy is that the design of Center Grove's defense is to close gaps. The design of dribble drive and what Norwell runs offensively is to take advantage of different gaps, single gaps, double gaps, triple gaps. It's completely counterintuitive. The two are going to crash into each other in the middle of Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Saturday night, and we have no idea what's going to come out on the other side of it. But that is from a scheme, strategy, and X and O perspective as good of a matchup as you could possibly get, because it's best on best. It's the best gap defensive team in the state, and it's the best offensive gap attacking team in the state.
Let's move over to the 3A North. We'll be talking a lot of, obviously, Center Grove, Norwell. Bellmont 56, Connersville 41. I mean, Bellmont wasted no time taking control of that game. I think they limited them to 4 points in the first quarter. Spartans came back a little bit and scored 13 points in the second, but that only took 2 points off the lead. And, you know, we talk about how the Stars sometimes have to line for teams to go on these runs. Well, for Bellmont, they've had a really good program year over year. It's just Norwell, of all teams, who would have thought, has stood in their way. Well, now Norwell's out of the way, and here's Bellmont showing the state what a lot of people who've been paying attention have known for a while. They're a darn good team.
They're complete. They are complete. And, you know, they were attacking some of the Connersville defenses, whether it be in zone or man. But when Connersville flipped to man, they went into like a 5-out DHO sequence that ended in a layup. It facilitated the fist pump by coach. Like, they seem to be ready for everything. They seem to have answers for everything. But one of the reasons why they have answers for everything is, and I think I don't want to talk about Mary Blakey, and I know that Belmont's probably like, hey, we're more than her, and we're going to get to some of those other pieces too. Mary Blakey's so good. Like, she is so good at her occupancy of the middle against zone, even front zone, press offense, her ability in that DHO 5-out offense that coach runs. She's talented enough to be able to get out and attack off the bounce and draw help. She's really good at dribble handoff. That kid's a weapon. So in the 3A state championship, that's probably the first person that you need to recognize as to where is her effectiveness and where is the placement of her on offense. You know, is she out of foul trouble, things like that, because she is really she's not the point guard, but she is the person who really kind of keeps everything together, at least from my eye.
Some stats for you. Ashley Blakey, 16 points against Connersville. 14 of their points came from Mary Blakey. Kate Kitson and Caitlin Barton both had 10 apiece. Krukenberg tagged on 6. They gave up 18 points in the fourth quarter, Bellmont did, but they came back with 17 of their own. So that's, they went with punch for punch. And I mean, that's demoralizing when the other team is able to match you like that. Go ahead.
Read those stats again. Will you say that again? Barton? How many did she have?
10, as did Kate Kitson. Mary Blakey had 14. Ashley had 16. Krukenberg tacked on 6.
Okay. So my new admiration on Belmont's roster is Caitlin Barton. This kid is so fast. Her speed jumped out on screen. And the reason why it did is because I had questioned coming into it the ability to have anybody that could run with Anaya Bennett, who is a track star. Mm-hmm. Barton could do it. And she could do it. And there were times where Barton looked faster. She guarded Anaya Bennett. She gave you 10 points. She doesn't play up the point guard the way that Kitson does. Krukenberg made big threes. The Blakey sisters are going to do their thing. But they are completed by what Caitlin Barton does on the defensive side. And I think in 3A South, I would not be surprised to see Caitlin Barton check Elliot Leffler and make that her personal mission to try to take that away and bother her. But she has like lightning speed, Hank. It's awesome to watch.
I can't wait. These games are great. Like I hear you talk about them. Norman, I know from what I've read. It's going to be a phenomenal day of basketball. Anything else you wanted to chime in on 3A before we move down to 2A?
No, go ahead. Just move to wherever you want.
starting with the 2A North, I want to start off with a note here about Bremen and what they overcame yesterday. I'm not sure if people saw this, but the South Bend Tribune reported on it. Michiana Hoops did as well. Tegan and Skyly Feathers lost their mom to cancer on Thursday, and a couple days later, they're out there playing in a semi-state game. Thoughts and prayers, obviously, the family, but just, my God, man, the resiliency of young people continues to just amaze. As it applies to that championship game, I want to talk a little bit about the semifinal in a minute, but as it applies to the championship game against Oak Hill, they were down 20 in the fourth quarter. They came back and cut it all the way down to 6. Bremen did. I mean, just a phenomenal comeback, but it comes up short against an Oak Hill team that surprised me for sure and a lot of others with its 2-game run on Saturday.
It was a nice comeback in the second half. In fact, I started and we say speed watch all the time, right? So sometimes we're watching them in 2X, sometimes we're fast forwarding and things like. You just saw like the score start to go down, and then I had to rewind it and kind of see what was happening. But Oak Hill, neither you nor I certainly predicted this. Okay, let me establish that I had Whitco. But if you're a religious listener to the show, right after the sectionals, we started drawing comparisons to Oak Hill to some of the past state championship winners, and with just like Cates and Daly and their high-low. But now that we are a little bit deeper into their analysis and watching them play a couple of basketball games this weekend, Oak Hill can beat you in different ways, and it's not just the high-low. And I am sure that those people are probably like, finally, Danny, we're not just Cates and Daly. No, you're not, and I apologize. And we will do a deeper dive into who you are. Because, and this is not, Oak Hill's not new to Gainbridge, right? Like Courtney Moses was there. I believe it was twice in a row against Heritage Christian. Todd Law won it, I think it's like 5 or 6 years ago, I think, with another team. I think they might even have another runner up there. That's a community that knows how to get there. So we'll see if they pick up on the show. But what's interesting about what they did in semi-state was Oak Hill beat Whitco, who is 84 feet of run and jump man in your face defense. And they beat Bremen, who played in the pack line, inside the 3-point line, in a 2-3 zone, and shrunk the court, if you will. That ability to win 2 basketball games against 2 really good teams with 2 totally different schemes, I think speaks to how well they are coached, how well that those kids adjust on the fly, how well they can retain scouting report. Because let's keep in mind, there's been a ton of conversation about this 2-game semi-state, right? That's not, hey, we played one of them on Monday and then the other one on Wednesday and we prepared for them on Tuesday. No, they were in the hotel lobby for 30 minutes probably talking about what they were going to do against Bremen, and it was completely different than all of the things they had practiced all week. Oak Hill is going to be a very, very difficult team to beat. And they were really impressive this weekend. Again, admittedly, I had Whitco, but I am also not at all surprised that they are here because we called it after the sectional round.
Brianna Daly, 6'1" inside. I mean, you mentioned her. She ran into a little bit of foul trouble that allowed Bremen kind of to get back in the game a little bit. But, I mean, credit to the Golden Eagles. They weathered that storm. After they got out to 20, they committed 7 turnovers in the fourth quarter and hit 5 triples. Bremen did to get back into that game, which is just ridiculous. They got it to 58-52 with just under 4 minutes to play, but couldn't quite get over the hump. A credit to Oak Hill for hitting shots the way that they did.
One more point before you get to the semifinal. They had a kid named Lily Edwards, by the way, who is not Cates and not Daly and not Pond and not Hardman. Hardman and Pond both played great and hit big shots. Lily Edwards hit a couple of 3-pointers. I think she has maybe over 160 attempts on the year. I think she's shooting about 30%, but I think she had 3, maybe even 4 threes. It actually facilitated a Bremen box and one. And they didn't run it on Cates, Daly, Pond, or Hardman. They ran it on Lily Edwards. And it did clue me to the fact that Bremen probably likes box and one and because it takes you out of scheme, and they probably run it quite a bit based on game flow. But that was really interesting to me, was that there was like 3 or 4 possessions in a row in the second quarter where Bremen comes out face guarding Lily Edwards. I was like, wow. So they're complete. Oak Hill's complete. They're not here by accident.
Bremen, as I transition us to that semifinal game, Eliana Grubbs, who's on the show with us leading into semi-state, 14 points in her final game. Emma Kincaid and then Lawmaster both had 13 apiece. Skyly Feathers added 10. 8 of hers came in the fourth quarter. That semifinal game was something else. That was one you pulled it up early. Depending on when you tuned in, you probably saw them down by 10 early. Bremen was. Then they ripped off a 32-6 run to take a 34-18 advantage early in the third quarter. I mean, it was incredible. They're hitting 3-pointers, 3 of them from Grubbs, and they outscored them 25-3 between the second and third quarters. A 25-3 run Bremen did. That 2-3 defense that we talked about leading into it was really effective. They did a really good job of denying Lanaya opportunities inside. Just a really impressive performance by Bremen. And again, that just speaks to what Oak Hill. I mean, that's a hell of a two for you. Mentioned the contrasting styles, but I mean, just on paper, taking out Bremen, who I think was probably favored in that second game once Whitco got knocked out. Really, really impressive. And tip of the cap, obviously, to Lanaya. We've talked about her a lot, but phenomenal 4-year run for that young lady with the 3 semi-state appearances and a state runner-up finish her freshman season. 2A South. This one, if anybody tells you that they saw this one coming, Eastern Pekin versus Parke Heritage, they are a liar. I want that on the record. Maybe one of the two, but certainly not both. How about that game? How about those teams? Eastern Pekin, Parke Heritage in the morning session takes out Heritage Christian, a sizable upset. They were down, what? Were they down double digits in the fourth quarter, I think? Either way, they come back to win it in the fourth. Eastern Pekin holds off North Knox in a crazy game. It looks like North Knox is down for the countdown, 2 possessions. Then suddenly, I think they hit like a 3-pointer or something like that, get right back in the game. I was watching it with Soak up top. But just a wild game for both of them to advance. And then the championship game, 48-41. What'd you see there?
So the first thing I would say is the Heritage Christian loss was one of the, oh my gosh, Heritage Christian got beat when we were in the stands kind of looking up the scores for the game. That also took away kind of the romantic rematch, because I had mentioned when Oak Hill was in, I think maybe in the late 2010s, when Courtney Moses, now Courtney Delks, was there, our co-host from season 2, was in the state championship. She was playing against Kelly Ferris. It was Oak Hill and Heritage Christian in back-to-back years. One of those games was a 2-point game that went into overtime, and I just kind of had in the back of my mind, it's definitely possible that Oak Hill and Heritage Christian are going to rekindle that rivalry, 15 years later. That being said, so they get knocked off. And the thing that I would say, oh gosh, my screen just jumped. The defensive game plans of Eastern Pekin is they played a defensive scheme against Bryn Owens and Austin that was as detailed as running an odd front zone, and after the first ball, reversal would fall into man and then match up on Bryn Owens. In this particular basketball game, they ran a different defensive scheme where they mixed up pressures against Parke. They ran 3 different kinds of zones all in the first half, and we saw them all in tight windows of change within the second quarter of that game. None of those 3 defensive schemes was the odd front zone after first ball reversal go into man that they ran against Austin. Here's my point. Eastern Pekin's coach is going to put in a defensive scheme and a defensive game plan that's based specifically on what she believes gives them the best chance to win, and they execute it, and that's why they're here. They guard. And they hit big shots. Like Addie Smith, we had on the show, and she just kind of shrugged, right, Hank? She was just like, I just guard the best player every night. It's fine. And she did it. They did it again. It's crazy. It's crazy. So yeah, Eastern, congratulations.
Now you have a situation where you have 2 teams in Class 2A are kind of playing with house money because nobody necessarily expected them to be there. I mean, that's that's going to be insane. 2 teams just house money at this point. That's going to be a blast.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because while it's relatively chalky at 4A and even 3A, well, not even 3A, probably maybe even more so 3A.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. 2A is kind of. The glass slipper is in the second game of the morning session.
That's gonna be a lot of fun. Class A North, Fremont, Elkhart Christian. Fremont, it didn't encounter much resistance in either of its 2 games on Saturday, unsurprisingly. Elkhart Christian, they had the firepower. It's been a magical run for them, a good comeback. But I mean, Fremont looks like, the team that beat Marquette Catholic, they look like the team to beat out of the Class A North. That was a mumbled sentence, but they look really good, Danny.
They do. So Fremont, Elkhart Christian. For those that don't follow Class A basketball, we had talked about it in the previous show. These are like 2 of the three or four best teams. I mean, obviously you're going to talk about Borden, you're going to talk about Marquette Catholic. You already did in the intro to this basketball game. These might be the next two teams mentioned in regards to like boxing who the best players are in A. And Fremont. Now, I will say Elkhart Christian, I believe in this basketball game, did lose their starting backcourt when the two sisters collided in our concussion protocol. And I think they actually had to leave the building to go get stitches. So I hope the Orty sisters are okay, and I hope everything went fine there. But Fremont already had a 13 or 14 point lead at that point in time. They were their ability to copy and paste the performance that they had against Marquette Catholic, to me, I found really extraordinary. That it's Maya Turner, it's Grace Sharlock. Those two kids, like Sharlock had, I think it was 30 in the semifinal, and Maya Turner comes out and has a 4-point play and maybe 12 points, I think, in the first half of this game, probably finished with 20 or so. Again, the game kind of got out of hand a little bit. Otherwise, she probably would have gone for 30. But those two kids are a problem for anybody to deal with, and they were a problem for Elkhart Christian to deal with. Also, these are real basketball players, man. Like, so you might look at the box score and be like, yeah, Sharlock had 30, but then she probably only had like a dozen in the second game. Yeah, she threw 8 dots. Like, she had 8 assists. Like, she was responsible for probably the same 30 points. It just came in a different way. I was celebrating some of the adjustments that I saw Coach Shay Thomas at Fremont employ against Marquette Catholic. I saw some of the same minuscule adjustments in this one as well. Let's get to know Fremont, because in the absence of Elkhart Christian and Borden, I think right now we have the two best teams that are still alive. Yeah, well, still alive. I mean, just like the two best teams that are still alive. Like, I think once Marquette Catholic got beat, then I think the two best teams that were still alive in the semi-state round, I think, are going to play for the state championship. But Fremont's very good.
Yeah, agreed, for sure. Speaking of the other half of that matchup, Borden beating Greenwood Christian 65-26. There was some intrigue for Borden in that morning game. They got behind Evansville Christian. I think they managed to trail at halftime. Either way, they came storming back and had like 3 points in the second half, and again, that'll do it. But Borden rolls in to the Class A championship game for the second year in a row.
They're surgical right now. Mm-hmm. They're surgical. And the last play of the third quarter, they ran a set where they would throw the basketball to Rarick. The ball reversal ended up going back around. It ends up in a flare for, I can't remember who it was, and buries it at the buzzer. Surgical execution. But it was set up by the last play that they ran in the second quarter, albeit not successfully. But the same action started where they threw the ball right to Rarick. They reversed the basketball and it ended up in a back screen lob for Rarick. Like, surgical execution. They just didn't in regards to like where the players go. They didn't execute the pass very well. But they look like they're just messing around right now. Like the three at the end of the third quarter, I think, made it like 50-16. Rarick had a stretch in the second quarter where it was like, I mean, and again, I didn't stat the game. It probably was 2 threes, 3 layups, 2 steals, 2 rebounds, like 9 straight points or 10 straight points. Like, it was silly to see how effective they can be in these little stretches. And by the way, they probably didn't score until like 3 minutes left in the first quarter. Like they got off to like this poor start, and then they're sitting on a 34-point lead, a basket away from a running clock in the semi-state championship. Crazy good. They're so surgical.
Crazy. Some stats on Riley Rarick between the two semi-state games: 41 points, 16 rebounds, 10 assists, 4 blocks, 5 steals. Somebody that I wanted to shout out to, because we are doing Players of the Week this week, Grace Sharlock, who we talked about last week for Fremont. She averaged 21 points, 6.5 assists over her 2 games. She was 5 for 5 from 3 in that first game. That is going to be a very interesting start to our Saturday morning with those two teams going at it.
5. Yeah. I'm surprised when she misses. Yeah. I'm sure she is too. But like, she's one of those kids that when she shoots the basketball, it looks like it's going in, and if it rims out, you're like, oh my God, what happened? Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody opened a door at the same time.
Greenwood Christian, by the way, 17-11 in their first year under Grant Pruitt. That's a team that's a program that's quickly on the turnaround. They had a very dramatic finish against Tinley in the afternoon session. I caught the very tail end of that thing, but it went right down to the wire. They came roaring back from an 11-point deficit over the final 4 minutes of the game to make it a one-possession game down the stretch. Myra Affinity had 17 points and 14 rebounds for GCA in that first game, and then Molly Hunter had a double-double with 14 and 14. So, yeah, tip of the cap to both Greenwood Christian and Tinley in my coverage area on fantastic seasons. I know Tinley certainly wasn't expected to be there. Greenwood Christian's one of those teams that's their record is deceptive because of the competition that they're forced to play with their schedule. Or choose to play, not forced to.
Yeah. let me tease the A game here a little bit, and sure. It's Borden. Let's just put Borden away in a box for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Fremont. Charlock's going to be back next year. Turner's awesome. I knew she was good. I didn't know she was that good. Okay. She's going to be back next year. Verden is going to be back next year. I apologize if I mispronounce that last name. But all of those kids are going to be back. So here's my point. If they don't get Borden, they're going to log the experience of being downtown, handling the media, managing, media timeouts and managing all of those things that come, the sight lines and all of that. Also, at the same time, all of the dominance at Borden, not all of the dominance, but much of the dominance at Borden is going to graduate. Lanaya Davis graduates. Yes, Marquette Catholic will be very good still with, Pennzoil and Pleasant and all of that. But this could be the beginning of a nice little 2-year run for Fremont, win or lose in the state championship. If they win it, the story in Class A going into the next season will be, can Fremont repeat in the same way that it was this year? Can Borden repeat?
Same way it was. Same way it was with Lanesville too.
Correct. So just kind of a little interesting thing here that, let's not throw Fremont away and be like, well, I'm not going to watch it because Borden is going to do this or that or whatever. And they might. But you're going to hear from this Fremont team all season next year, and they're going to be the Marquette Catholic maybe of that north side in A and maybe get back there. I really, really like this team. I grew a ton of respect just through watching, a couple of basketball games with Shea Thomas. I like what she does with that team.
That's going to be fantastic. Well, that's Danny. That's all I have from yesterday. I assume you've emptied the notebook now as well. We'll have plenty of talking about it.
Games?
Yeah, we hit all 8. We got it in under an hour too.
No way.
Yeah, right. We're talented. We're in midseason form, buddy.
Well, there's less teams and less games, so we can go deeper on all of that.
That's true. It's nice. But yeah, so we'll have preview shows this week. I think we'll do a predictions pod too, just for the hell of it. Those are always fun. That'll be our 100th anniversary, our 100th episode celebration as well. So we'll do all that stuff.
Cool.
We'll have, like I said, the preview episodes. I'm not sure what days those will come out. It'll kind of depend on everybody's availability, Danny's and mine included. We'll have media day, so Indy Star coverage is going to start here probably tomorrow or Tuesday. Lots of stories, breakdowns of all the classes, anything you can want for more. And then on Saturday, obviously, wall-to-wall coverage with live blogs. I'll be there for all 4 games with analysis, video highlights. Clark will be there. Gary Smith will be there. The whole gang will be there. So, yeah, it's weird that it started the end of the season, but thank you guys so much for watching, and we will talk to you again here in a couple days.
See you guys.